So we talk a lot about how parents, caregivers, influence kids, right? Their development.
So it's constant theme.
But what if influence isn't even the right word? What if it's deeper, like actually structural?
That's exactly where we're going today.
Okay. So we're doing a deep dive looking at this one really specific source. The outside system, architecture of early consciousness.
Right. And it's intense.
Our mission really is to try and grasp the systemic power a caregiver holds, analytically,
No.
not metaphorically.
Yeah, forget soft psychology for a moment. This source positions the caregiver as the literal architecture of a child's mind as it's forming.
Wow. Okay, so the central idea we need to kind of absorb right off the bat is...
It's pretty stark. To a child, the caregiver isn't just, the main person around. They are the system, the whole thing, the environment, the rules, even the physics of how reality works, apparently, all contained in this external person.
That's a huge leap, because the source insists, doesn't it, that this isn't poetry.
No, not at all.
It is the architecture. And they use these really striking claims like, the caregiver is the air, the sky, the ground. That sounds so poetic, though.
It does, but the source argues it's analytical.
So why use those kinds of existential terms? Why not just talk about attachment, like we usually do?
Well, because attachment theory still kind of assumes two separate people interacting, right?
Okay.
The outside system argues that in the very earliest stages, the child just doesn't have the internal gear to separate self from environment. So if the child hasn't built their own system for processing everything coming in...
the caregiver becomes the processor.
Pretty much, yeah. They are the processing unit. So that sets the analytical bar really high. We're talking systemic functions here, not just emotional bonds.
Okay, good. Well, let's unpack that. Let's get specific. If we accept this premise, the adult is the child's entire external system, what are the actual components? What does the source mean when it says the caregiver's moods are the child's weather? Is that just a bad mood makes the kid feel bad?
It's way more than that. Think systemically.
Oh.
Weather determines if resources are available, right? Predictability.
Resources like?
Comfort, attention, safety. If the caregiver's emotional state, their mood, is constantly stormy or freezing or just totally unpredictable, then the child learns that those fundamental resources are unreliable. They have to spend energy constantly monitoring, trying to predict the weather, instead of just, developing.
So stability in the caregiver means the child gets predictable resource allocation for their brain. That makes sense, actually.
Yeah.
But then the caregiver's voice is the child's physics.
Yeah.
That feels even more technical. Physics.
Yeah, I guess physics defines cause and effect, right? The rules of the universe, how things work, predictably.
Okay.
So if the caregiver's voice is, say, chaotic, really loud sometimes, other times withdrawn, inconsistent tone, volume all over the place, no clear signals.
Then the child learns that the world makes no sense.
Basically, yeah. That the world is fundamentally unstable. The rules of engagement are random. But a consistent voice, predictable, modulated, that sets reliable boundaries.
It defines structure. The stability of the sound creates the stability of the world, in a way.
Exactly. The physics of interaction.
And the last one here, the caregiver's choices are the child's horizon. That seems to be about exploration, limits.
Absolutely. The horizon is the edge of your known world, right?
Right.
So the adult's choices, how willing are they to explore new things, to tolerate a bit of risk, to engage with stuff they don't know? That defines how big the child believes their world can be.
So if the caregiver is very cautious, very limited,
then that becomes the child's perceived boundary, the edge of the map. Even if the actual world is huge, the system they're in says, nope, danger beyond this point. Or maybe even there's nothing beyond this point.
which would totally stifle any impulse to explore independently.
Significantly, because the system itself has labeled those areas unsafe or non-existent.
Okay, this really highlights the power dynamic then. The source says the child literally cannot measure the system, cannot escape it, cannot survive without it.
They can't. Their only strategy is to look to the caregiver for, well, everything. Trust, safety.
And the basic signal that the world is okay, that it's good.
Exactly. And that signal is so crucial because it's more than just feeling safe. It's like proof of reality.
Proof of reality. How so?
If the main source of all information, the entire external system you rely on, is chaotic, inconsistent, what do you learn?
Chaos is normal, that it's the default state.
Precisely. You internalize that as the truth of existence. It's not just about feeling insecure. It's about how life itself gets coded into you from the start. The adult is providing the initial data set.
Wow. Okay, so if this external system is constantly feeding the child data through its weather, its physics, its horizon, how does that become the child's internal blueprint for emotional survival? Because that seems to be where the echo principle comes in.
That's the bridge. Exactly. We move from the outside inputs to what gets mirrored inside, often unconsciously.
Right.
The echo principle basically says the adult is managing their own stuff all the time, right? Their own pain, joy, stability. And that whole internal management process, it's being broadcast.
Right.
Non-verbally.
Right.
Right into the child's developing consciousness.
Okay, and this is key, I think, for anyone listening. The way the adult manages their own stress or joy. It doesn't just echo as an example.
No.
It echoes as the definitive truth, capital P truth, about how life works.
Exactly that. The child isn't just seeing mom or dad stressed out. They're watching how mom or dad handles being stressed out.
A mechanism.
Yes. The failure tolerance, the crisis response. If the adult deals with anxiety by, I don't know, shutting down or blowing up or needing constant distraction, that method gets downloaded. It becomes the child's default blueprint for managing stress later on.
So if the adult finds joy only in, say, external validation or constant activity, the child learns that's the path to happiness, not maybe internal contentment.
That's the idea. The management style itself becomes the truth. It's not the specific event, like you said, it's the process of recovery or management the adult demonstrates.
Because they might not even be aware they're demonstrating.
Often not. They're just living their lives, dealing with their stuff. But the child isn't just observing the emotion, they're observing the process, charting the data points of self-regulation, you could say.
That's why the source calls this role, what was it? The most frightening and sacred role a human can hold.
Right. Sacred because you're literally involved in the creation of a consciousness. Frightening because the power is just immense and unavoidable. And it operates whether the adult intends it to or not.
The system doesn't care about good intentions.
Yep.
It only registers the actual data stream being broadcast, moment to moment.
Which brings us back to the non-metaphorical nature of it all. This relationship, this system, it dictates the actual structure. It's like mental engineering.
Foundational structure.
Yeah. And that structure, that leads us to maybe the most striking synthesis in the source, this idea of the Sims paradox of parenting.
Ah, yes, I like that bit. It's memorable, but it keeps that technical edge. So walk us through the Sims paradox. How does it tie the external system to the internal blueprint?
It's actually pretty simple, but the implications are huge. The source states that very analytically, the adult is quite literally the operating system the child runs inside.
Okay, like software.
Less like an app, more like the kernel, the core system that manages everything, how inputs are processed, how memory works, sensory interpretation initially. It all flows through the adult's OS.
So the child isn't just using the adult's phone, they're temporarily running on the adult's core programming.
Exactly. And the paradox part is the temporarily. The child runs on this external OS until they build one of their own.
Right.
They are completely reliant on the adult's internal logic, the adult's stability, the adult's structure, just to make sense of the world. That's vulnerability at its most extreme.
So what happens then? I mean, using that analogy.
Yeah.
What if the external OS, the caregiver, is buggy, prone to crashes, doesn't handle errors well?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the source definitely goes there if we connect it all up.
Yeah.
The child is learning how to boot up, how to process things, how to manage resources based on a potentially unstable system. If that outside OS is unpredictable, if it crashes a lot, maybe what we'd call a kernel panic in tech terms,
High stress, system overload.
then the child learns that instability, maybe frantic energy, maybe shutdown, that's just a normal part of processing difficult input. That becomes the baseline.
Wow. That sounds like setting up a massive hurdle for later life.
Yeah.
If your initial coding is panic first, then scramble.
Right. You're setting that child up for a really taxing internal life, even after they start coding their own system.
Because the foundation was shaky.
Precisely. I mean, the goal is independence, right? For the child to build their own stable internal operating system. But how quickly and how well they can build that, it depends hugely on the quality of that initial programming, the blueprint they got from the external architecture.
So a cleaner original OS means a smoother transition. Less debugging needed later.
That's the logic. A cleaner, more stable initial code makes building your own system much easier. A fragmented, buggy initial code means, well, the adult child has a lot more work to do later on. Rewriting, debugging, trying to build stability on a shaky foundation.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this for you, the listener. The outside system really forces us to shift perspective. The caregiver isn't just an influence, they are the child's fundamental reality. The structure itself. Yeah, the physics, the weather, the horizon.
And the basic capital T truth about how life works. They are the entire outside system until the child manages that huge task of building their own internal one.
Which leaves us with maybe one last thing to chew on, a provocative thought for you to explore on your own.
Since the adult really does function as that initial operating system, what effects linger? What residual code might still be there, maybe buried deep in the configuration files even after the child grows up, becomes independent, builds their own seemingly stable system? Does anything remain from having first run inside the specific architecture of that particular adult's stability, their particular truth? Does the ghost of the original code ever fully vanish?
Something to definitely mull over. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the outside system.